There's nothing better than a top five, except for maybe two top fives. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm your host, Couper Moorhead. Welcome back to another edition of After the Buzzer. And we are very lucky to be joined here today by none other than Amy Audibert, the triple threat, quadruple threat, quintuple threat. I don't know. You can find her everywhere. She's on the radio. She's on the sideline. She's in the locker rooms. Amy, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm so happy we're having this conversation. A week off in February is just too much. So we need to talk about basketball.
Absolutely. And what we're going to be doing here today, like we said, we're doing top five storylines for the rest of the year, top five things that we're watching. Top five, it's broad, it's general, but it's really from about now through the beginning of the playoffs, top five things that Amy and I are watching. And we will begin with Amy's five, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, so I have a couple on court, a couple more off court things. The first thing I'm going to look at, which might seem obvious, but I think it's a huge deal, is the remaining schedule. You look at the Heat right now, and what they want to do is get out of the play-in. And so I sat there and I looked. There are 26 games remaining. Miami right now, of course, at the break, 2 games over 500, eighth place in the East, a very tight East. And listen, this is the thing. They play of the 26 games, Coop, 21 of them are against East teams. So when you talk about your destiny is in your hands, I feel like we were kind of saying these things last year too. And I don't that's not a bad thing or a good thing. It is what it is. That you're kind of still in the fight, still in the race to get out of the play-in. But you got to show up and win games. I think it's a good thing for Miami that 21 of those games are against Eastern opponents, five of them, of course, against the West. I went, which teams are above 500, which teams are below 500. As of today, 13 and 13. So for Miami, like you have to take care of business. You have to beat the teams that you should beat. You're probably going to have to pull up some upsets. I hate using that word because I think this Miami team, and they've shown it, they can beat the
Have good
OKC.
nights on the right nights, right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, you know what I mean? Like they've
Yeah.
shown that they can beat the best teams in the league. They've shown that unfortunately they can take out, I mean, every team, right, can take L's to the teams that aren't the best teams in the league. So, but I think in terms of 21 teams, 21 games against Eastern opponents is awesome. According to Tankathon, which is I like their strength of schedule ratings. They're really good, I think, for that.
Mm-hmm.
Miami's 24th in terms of strength of schedule, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think, right? Like they've got some tough games, but they play Washington 3 times, right? They play Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and Atlanta 2 times each. Like you've got to
Mm-hmm.
take care of certain games. So yeah, that's kind of my first thing is looking at the schedule and saying like you have to win, you have to beat the teams that you should beat, and that being said, you can't take anyone lightly in this league.
Absolutely. And I think you get to the end, every team, when you get to the end of the season and you end up, maybe we could have been a 4 seed, maybe we could have been a 5 seed. Whenever you feel like there's something you left on the table, it's always those games you look back to as, yeah, we should have won that game in November. We should have won that one game in December. It's always a couple of those. It's not death by 1,000 cuts, but it's death by like 7 or 8 cuts that really
Yep.
cost you in the end. And it's funny you say that because my number five is pretty much the same thing. Not quite the rest of the schedule, but it's playoff seeding and what matters. And a lot of these just really could be your number one, right? Like we could just spend the whole time saying this is the next 2 months and this is what really matters. But I'm actually putting this five because I'm not sure how much matters beyond getting out of the play-in. Getting out of the plane is obviously the number one thing. You got to get out of there. You don't want to be in it 4 years in a row. You don't want to be in the situation where not only are you playing for your lives, where you have to win one game or 2 games to get into the playoffs, but you also want that week of rest, that week of preparation. You don't want to be. You remember that situation last year where we had no idea where we were going, no idea who we were playing, and all of a sudden 2 days later you have to go play Cleveland. You
Yeah.
don't want to put yourself in that spot. And the other thing I'm looking at with the East is, look, I want to give a lot of respect to Detroit, to Boston, to New York, to the teams that are up there. Cleveland's been playing great basketball, but I also don't know if there's one of those teams that's separated itself from the other ones. So as far as the matchup goes, playoffs is all about matchups, but I don't know if you really need to worry about positioning. You just need to get in, and then anybody that you play, there will be an aspect of that series that you can maximize to make that series winnable for you. Obviously, those teams, if they're 1, 2, 3, 4, they will have a better record. But I think in some ways, some form or fashion, they're all winnable. You just got to get there. You got to get out of the play-in if you can. But as they have also shown, if they're in the play-in, they're more than capable of winning those games as well.
Yeah. I agree, but let's make no mistake. The common thread is everyone's, and the thing is, like to your point, like you're in a position to do that. You still are. I know that. I know the last couple weeks there's been some tough losses for sure, but you're still in a position to make a push. You never know what other teams are doing, but when you look again at those 21 games against Eastern
Mhm.
opponents, that's big time.
Yep.
That's huge, I think, for the Heat, and I hope that's probably got to be some of their conversation, right? Like you guys can still make a run here.
Yeah, and there are a lot of tiebreakers up in the air still too, right? Unfortunately, they're 0-4 against the Magic, but there's still tiebreakers up in the air with the Hornets, with Philly, with Toronto, with Atlanta. Like you said, those tiebreakers are basically worth a game in the standings at the end of the thing. So hey, it's in your hands. Go do it.
Yeah.
As for number 4, let's go to that one.
Okay, so the bench. I think this is a huge narrative, and the second unit for the Miami Heat this season. When you look at how good that second unit is on a nightly basis, like there is a common thread in terms of when they come in and they're producing at a high level on both ends of the court. That's to me, that's the Heat's biggest strength is the depth of this team. You got to give a little bit of grace to that second unit in terms of like some of the and every team says this, so it's not an excuse. It just is what it is. It's been hard to have that like super cohesive second unit just because I mean we saw it going into the break with Simone and Myron right getting to start Pella out. But I love Jaime. He should be in the. I love what he's doing this season. He should be in that sixth man of the year, no
Absolutely.
doubt. Those 15 points, one of the top guys in terms of touching the paint this season. And so I love the fact that he's only had one start this year, and obviously he's one of the best players on the Heat. I think he's having one of the best seasons for the Heat this year. But I love when Spo kind of really protects certain things, and I think because this team really like that second unit is so important, that punch is so important that Jaime's kind of the one that has been the leader there all season. So I do say, like, you look at that second unit and they are fourth in scoring, sixth in rebounding, third in assists. So they have very good games consistently. They're usually better than not. But on the nights where they struggle a little bit, it's tough for Miami. And so for me, that's a narrative that I've kind of been following all season. But I think at this point in the season, I hope everyone agrees that second unit is so valuable and important to this team, and their success is kind of like detrimental to the team's success either way.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back at that October, November start when they were scoring 130, 140 every game, I think at one point it was about 6 weeks into the season, Jaime led the entire league in plus minus, right? He was, and it's not just Jaime. Like plus minus is representative of the lineups that you're playing with, and the bench was just going. They were so gangbusters, and they were just beating people up, and especially in those that bridge shift between the end of the first and the beginning of the second quarter, they were building up such a lead that the starters would be able to hold on to, and they'd be up by 20 in some of those games at halftime. And you're right, Jaime is the driving force, but then you've also got Drew Smith coming off with one of the highest deflection steal rates in the league, turning defense into offense, which is huge for that unit. Or if he's not playing, then you've got Casper shooting really well. Whether he's starting, whether he's coming off the bench, that gives the bench a different look. But you've got a lot of different options. Myron, obviously, I would say he pretty much won them that Thunder game when he came off and hit 3 straight threes. They've got a lot of depth. They've got a lot of options, and the bench is obviously huge, and it will be huge not just through the next 2 months, but will also be important in the playoffs. So my number 4 is a little bit similar. It's the starting lineup, but as it pertains to Tyler and especially as fit with Norm Powell. So those two have barely played together. They've played 143 minutes together, and I think there has been some sentiment out there that like we can kind of write it off and because we know it doesn't work. And I'm not with that. I don't think we've seen nearly enough of those two together to really be able to say one way or another how it does work because 143 minutes in the scope of the entire season is really nothing. But within those minutes, they have an offensive rating of a 111.5, despite the fact that those lineups are shooting 38% from three. So with those two guys on the floor, you'd want them to be at a little higher level offensively because that's where you would expect to be getting a lot of your punch. Whether or not it's working or not, I don't know because I think, back when it was Duterte and Tyler worked together, those two players both had the ball in their hands a lot. I think Norm and Tyler are a little bit of a different mix, and we shouldn't make the mistake of saying that Norm and Tyler are the same kind of players because Norm is more off the ball. He doesn't handle the ball as much. He's more of a play finisher, right? So I don't think there's as much of a sharing the ball issue. It's just getting those guys on the court together where I think the team needs Tyler's playmaking, because that's been a little bit of a sore spot in some of these games, especially against better defenses where they need, high level playmaking. And Norm is a great play finisher, so he can play off Tyler, I think, in that way. The defensive end of the floor they can figure out with the rest of the lineups. But I just think that there is something there that we haven't seen just because the guys have not been on the court together at all. We just shouldn't make the mistake of saying they're the same, so they can't be on the court and they can't work. I think it can work. I'm not saying it's going to be the best offense in the league when they are on the court together, but because both guys can play on and off the ball, and because Norm has been so successful in this offense, really just like making super, super quick decisions, catch and go, catch and shoot, catch and decide, I think there is a way where it can work. We just got to see them together at some point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's like two all-star players. So I understand numbers and I get it, but to your point, like they haven't played enough together to feel it out. And I also I think you got to give Spo and the staff a chance to figure out rotations and all that stuff too, because I think it's fascinating when you look at minutes and the way that they've distributed minutes this season. Taking Tyler out of it because he's only played 11 games, Wiggs and Bam are tied, and they're both averaging under 32 minutes a game. Like, think about that. Our two guys that play the most minutes are playing less than 32 minutes a game. So if you go look in the league, last time I checked, Wiggs was like at 22. Like, that's crazy. And so I guess my point to all of this is that guys are getting in and out. Like, so when you're out there, that doesn't mean Norm and Tyler are always going to be out there together either, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that there's got to be some other levels to unlock of an offense. But the reality is, you have two guys that are stretching defenses because they're great 3-point shooters. Two guys that you have to defend, like two guys that are. And listen, like give Norm when he attacks, like he'll make some plays too, right? But definitely miss
Mm-hmm.
Tyler getting into the paint and also his rebounding, right? When Tyler like decides he's going to go rebound the ball, he's pretty solid rebounder too at his size.
Yeah.
So I think,
Catch and go. Yeah.
we want to see him out there. Like how many times, Coop, have you looked over and said, man, we could have used even half of his 22, 25 tonight, So, and when they're
Yeah.
both out, that's close to 50 points sitting on the
Mm-hmm.
bench, not available. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, we gotta see him out there. We gotta see him out there for long enough to like really get a feel for it.
Yeah, and there are rotational permutations that spawn from that when they are available together. Because Davion's played great in the starting lineup. We've had great Pella Larson minutes. We've had great Andrew Wiggins. Like filling out the rest of the rotation is not just a plug and play. This is automatically who goes where and here there. But you want Spo to have that chance just to be able to figure that out, which he really just has not had, except for maybe 2 games. And 2 games is not. That's just the beginning of figuring it out. That's not in the process of figuring it out. So, all right, your number 3.
Okay, my number three. This, and it's so funny. I can't believe I kind of ranked this where I did, or it's even on my top five list. But this is something I have found so intriguing, and especially in the last month has gotten like a bit more of a focus for me, is that point guard position. Because Spo has three point guards that are
Amy, we're
all
thinking on the same.
are like they're all so different, but they've all proven that they can they're all reliable. Obviously, they all earn their opportunities, but they all bring something different. You'll see games now where like Spo's playing 3-point guards, obviously at different times. Sometimes there's two of them out there together. But I guess my point is at the beginning of the season, that was one of the biggest questions. I would say for me, anyways, was who's going to be the point guard of this team. I I love the season that Davion Mitchell's having. My gosh, he's been one of the most unselfish, reliable. I almost said unreliable, exact opposite of that, right? The assist to turnover ratio, the guy's 19 assists short of like his tying his career high for single season assists. Turnovers are way down. I think he's been so unselfish, playmaking, touching the paint, and then on the other end, he's an incredible defender. Then you got Drew, who's so solid, right? Like Drew can sit there and he's tough, and he'll sit there in front of like the stars of this league and like say you have to go through me to get to the rim, and I love that. You can tell his teammates love playing with him. To your point, the defense, right? Like he's averaging just under 2 steals a game. The deflections, he's so solid, and again, you just trust his IQ and everything that he brings. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, the 19-year-old, like let's throw him in there. How many games I have it? He had to start 8 games. And I think that was the biggest blessing in disguise for Cass in his season because he had to step into that point guard position when Davion was out with a shoulder injury. And all of a sudden, I think when you think you can do something, you put the work in, but then you have to go out and do it. And then you're confident because you're like, wait, I can do this. Oh, I'm ready to do this right now. And that's to be a starting point guard in this in the National Basketball Association at 19 years old. Pretty fascinating, pretty exciting. And I think it's a positive problem when you're trying to figure out minutes. because you want to balance minutes. You want to give these three point guards all a shot. I really believe that when Spo talks about a lot of times it is matchup based on who we're playing that night. It's true because they have three guys that they trust and three guys that they can use for different things. And it's just not what I would, if you would have told me we were having this conversation at the beginning of the year, I would have thought, like, I would have been like, okay, Coop. Well, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's, to me, it's been one of the, like, again, like just really cool storylines of the season.
Yeah. So for our viewers, just so you know, Amy and I did not tell each other what our top fives were going into this, but we are kind of mind melding here because my number three is literally the
Oh,
point guard rotation, Kasparis, and the playoff rotation as part of that. Because once you do get into the playoffs, you obviously, coaches are usually going to, grind the rotation down to 9 players, 8 players some nights, especially later in a series. And in those cases, you're not really going to have room for 3 point guards. So maybe it is, like you said, maybe it's matchup based. Maybe one of those guys is kind of jumps up ahead of the other. Maybe it's just whoever's playing best at that time. But there will be decisions to make. But I wanted to specifically key in on Kasparis because like I really, really like him as a prospect. I liked him when he was drafted. I like what we've seen from him so far, especially in terms of the mental toughness and physical toughness. A lot of rookie point guards, the learning curve is so steep that they can get out there and they can look very overwhelmed. He has never looked like that to me at all on either end of the floor. But I also, and this is going to sound negative, but it's not. I don't know that he's really had a breakout game yet. I know he's had a couple 20-point games, but I want to draw a distinction between, a game where you go 5 of 5 from 3 or 6 of 10 from 3. I think the shooting is awesome. In a lot of ways, the shooting is ahead of the schedule, and for the position he plays, it's going to be incredibly important for the rest of his career. So that's been a huge plus. But I don't think we've really seen that full breakout, like cast game of everything we know he can do as far as being a playmaker. Because in this offense, the offense has been great for some of the guys. It's been great for Jaime. It's been great for Davion. Just get these guys going downhill, get them attacking in space, one-on-one, great matchups. But Cass, I think, all point guards these days, they kind of train in the pick and roll because that's what modern basketball is. So he's learning a different way to play, and he's not getting as many opportunities so far to make those coverage reads that a lot of, you expect young point guards to have to develop. A lot of it's just, catch and go on a closeout, pump fake, those sort of situations, which I don't think has naturally been, he can do those things. It's just not the thing naturally that he's done for the past few years. So I'm kind of still waiting to see because if there is a part of his game that needs, development still, it's the finishing in the paint. He can clearly get in there, but, he's shooting 45% from 3, but he's shooting 30% on 2s. He's only
yeah.
taking 1 or 1.5 a game, so the percentage doesn't really matter that much. And young guys, look, finishing in the paint in the NBA, when especially you're like 20 years old, is really tough. Bam had trouble with it when he was a rookie. These are skills that you have to learn over the time. A lot of it is you just need the reps. But I think there is a version of Cass that we've still yet to see kind of like not the maximized, not the future version of Cass, but I think there's a skill set there that we haven't seen kind of fully break out altogether, including the playmaking, which I think it was against Utah where he like drove a closeout and he threw the ball blind
Yes.
behind his head to
Yeah.
Simone in the corner, and I
Shot
like
didn't go
almost
in.
jumped. Yeah, I
Yeah.
almost jumped out of my seat. Like
Yes.
that. That's just not the kind of a pass, and not the kind of playmaking that the Heat have had a lot of in the
Yes.
past, really like decade or so. And that's next level stuff. That's eyes in the back of your head. That's being able to see, the pass behind the pass, where the defense is going to rotate. He's got that processing in his head in real time. And if he can prove himself, as a playoff rotation caliber player, as someone who spoke and trust, there's a version of him, and I don't want to say I expect this because again he's young, but that's the kind of playmaking they really could have used against Cleveland last year. Remember when Cleveland was overloading the strong side of the floor and basically saying, you guys can throw that skip pass if you want. You can try it, but we're trying to make you do that. Try and flip the ball to the weak side. Cass has that in his game. It might be a little too early to say, yeah, that might be in the playoffs this year. But I'm just saying, if it could happen, if that little, breakout as far as the rest of his game beyond the shooting can really happen and bring him into the playoff rotation, it could be huge for this team.
Yeah, that's exactly when you said the different level. I went right to the same thing. I think why not? I certainly don't want to speak for him, but I think he's just getting in there and just like not trying to overdo it.
Hmm.
But at some point, he's going to be probably comfortable and confident enough to try all those things like that behind the head pass. Like it was fancy, but it was actually the right thing to do. He's 6'5", he's big,
Yeah.
right? So he can do those things too. I think we keep saying at his age, I don't know if anyone thought he was going to get thrown in there and then be the starting point guard for those 8 games, and then really, I mean, I think thrive for where he is right now in that position.
Yeah.
So when you talk about like what he can be, is just, yeah, it's really exciting, and I liked the pick myself, but to be honest, I didn't sit there and watch him enough to know as much as you probably did. But man, he's awesome. So yeah, really excited for him. But again, at that point guard position, just really cool that, and you said it earlier. Listen, you think you have your rotation, and then someone's hurt, someone picks up 2 quick fouls. I guess like my point to all this is like there's depth, and
Yeah.
you really are going to be okay with using any three of those guys at any given time is pretty special. And I don't think every team can say that.
Yeah. And I mean, Spo is, coaches tell you what they think of players by the minutes that they give them. And Cass has been out there a lot more than many other coaches would probably give someone at that age of that experience level. So he's clearly earning some of this. And what's impressed me, there's one last thing on him, is that he's kept the turnovers pretty much down. Like you said, he's keeping things simple. I don't think he's doing too many complicated things, but that was one of the things in college where his turnover rate was really, really high. And he's reduced that pretty drastically in the pros. Yeah, there's a couple where he, throws it. He's trying to make a kick out pass, or he's trying to sling it. He throws it to a defender or something. Typical young guy stuff. But for the most part, he's been a very steady hand, which again, you just don't expect from someone of that age. All right, let's go on to your number 2. Let's see if we're still going to match one for one here.
I feel like this is gonna be on your list, so maybe this is it. It's the two bigs. This is like, is that it, Coop? Because like I
Yes.
know that is what the people want us to talk about. To me,
Yeah.
have just been, I think, and I don't know if it's because we literally watch like every minute of every game we're working. You know what I mean? To me, and I understand why people are fired up about it. And listen, the last week it's looked great, and it's no offense to the teams, but not the best defensive teams. So
Yep.
both of those
Yep.
guys should be
Plus 67 in the last
impactful.
3 games. Yeah.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So we're talking about storylines or things we're looking for. It's can this double big continue to build? I
Mhm.
understand why it hasn't been used as much as people think. I think you got to watch the games and get away from the analytics and numbers at times. Defensive coverages and all that stuff matters, especially to this Heat team that wants to get out and run off of everything.
Mhm.
So I understand why those two haven't consistently coexisted, but we're seeing flashes of it. We're seeing more opportunity, and we'll see what happens after the break.
Yeah, it's just been one of those storylines that has gotten the fan base riled up a lot. And, I've never approached it from the sense that they don't have to play together a ton. I've never said like this has to work in this way, but I have, there is this the logistical reality, which is that if you want to get Kel'el a lot of minutes for a young, talented, developing guy, if he's only a backup center, there's only going to be 15, 16, max 20 minutes a game. If he's able to start, then you can give him more minutes just because you're getting him on the floor. It's more than that. So in that sense, I think it's been very valuable to be able to see them try and figure this out over the past 3 games. Again, like their offensive rating in those 3 games is 142, and their defensive rating is 67 because the teams that they're playing when those guys are on the floor together are like 3 of 27. So like I'm not putting a lot of stock into that. I know you aren't either. But at the same time, you'd rather see it work in those games than not work.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you play the people who are in front of you, but the numbers are just before those last 3 games they were in minus 7.5 net rating together, and
Yeah.
since then, including the whole season now, they're still another plus 3.6. Like that's how severe the turnaround has been. I'm interested though when they are on the floor together. Both guys are taking a lot of threes. Bam's 3-point rate has spiked, not just because of that pairing, but because of the offense in general. They've needed him to help facilitate 5-out spacing. They've needed him to take more threes, which was for the most part worked. But I want to see where the interplay between the two of them together can get to, because Bam has only thrown Kel'el 12 potential assists this year. Kel'el has only thrown Bam 2 potential assists. And by far the majority of those passes that have been there have been for threes. They've been kickouts for threes. So we haven't seen a lot of like, I'm going to get you an alley-oop, I'm going to get you a dunk. I don't know if that's the fault of the players because the offense, as they're running it, may not be facilitating that much. There's not, when you're running 5 out, you inherently don't have 2 guys in to, you don't have one person high, one person low for a high-low pass, right?
Exactly.
You're just not going to get it going there. So I'm not saying that these guys aren't looking for each other. It's just they're both kind of been spacers for everybody else at the same time on the floor. And the way you maximize that is have them both crash the offensive glass, which we have seen in stretches this year where they have just been dominant. And then there's been some stretches where, there have been stretches where they haven't necessarily been using that pair, but the offensive rebounding has come down. Kind of depends on the matchup, who you're playing. But I think Spo has said this many times. We want them to use their size, right? We want them to be maximizing the skill set on the floor, and you're going to see that a little bit on the offensive glass. But what you said originally was it has to be on the defensive end. Last year, that was the big thing. The defense was there. The reason last year that lineup didn't succeed as much is because the offense wasn't producing as much. This year, the defense has been a little bit below where you would expect. It was kind of in the league average 115, 116 defensive rating range. They're going to want to be better at that, especially when it comes to 2-point, shots allowed, 2-point percentages in the paint, because the threes are going to happen. That's just the league today. Part of the reason the defensive numbers this year weren't as good is because opponents were shooting 40% from 3. Some of that you're just not going to be able to do anything about. There's a shot variance to this whole thing, and as your sample size grows, that'll go out of the way. But the 2-point defense in the lane, when you've got Bam switching 1 through 4 and you've got Kel'el dropping back to protect the paint, that's where you want to see this pairing really become something great, become something more than just 2 young, talented bigs next to each other. So, again, we are go
I would
ahead.
just ask too, I would just add, teams scheme against it too. So when, and we see it all the time. Well, not all the time because they're not out there a lot together, but when they are, defense, when Miami's on defense, they'll try to take Bam's player, kind of stick him off to the side and put Kel'el in pick and rolls because he is in more of a drop coverage. I do think if you watch him, I think he's been making a big effort to really get a bit more mobile on the perimeter as a defender. And I mean, at his length, I think that's part of it. It's not even necessarily you have to get all this mobility and so much faster. It's just understanding how to utilize your length out there. But let's also not act like teams aren't responding or playing the chess match, right? And there's only so much you can do about it. So it's been I think it's been a challenge. Of course it has been for the staff to figure out because, Kel'el can do things that 90% of this league can't. And it's the greatest players in the world right now. So it's fascinating and it's awesome. Still got to figure it out and get reps. So yeah, we'll watch it, and I'm sure that the fans will too, right?
Yeah, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier. If Tyler can get back on the floor and they can work on that Tyler, insert him in the starting lineup, I think Tyler's playmaking will help facilitate those 2 guys as well and his paint pressure as well. All these things kind of work together at the same time.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe we'll keep going. Let's see your number 1. Are we aligned again?
I think I'm going to word this different, but I feel like we might be saying the same thing. To me, and this is always my number 1, but especially my number 1 when you get to March, is the health and the availability. And I of course, Tyler's been the biggest conversation. Listen, your returning All-Stars played in, what are we at, 11 games this season, right?
Yeah.
So it's not what you expect. It's not what you plan for. Again, it's not new to the Heat, and it's not new to any other team. It's something that happens sometimes in sport and you have to deal with. But it's not just Tyler, right? It's other guys too. If you don't have your health, that's why I cannot talk about potential, who's going to win this year, who's getting out of the East this year in October. That is my pet peeve, literally, because it's who's going to be healthy in March, April?
It
Let's
happens
start
every
on
year.
that conversation.
Yeah.
And to me, we can talk about schematics and we can talk about this and that and offense and defense and pick every little thing apart. But if you're not healthy, you ain't winning. This league is too good. And so for me, I think that's as obvious, and I didn't know how much I was going to be able to expand and talk on this. But if I'm being honest, which, I try to be when we have these conversations,
Mhm.
certainly I think health has got to be the top of the list. If this team's healthy and they feel good, and I'll go back to the minutes, I think the staff has done an excellent job balancing minutes when you want to play at this pace and all that stuff. You can't run guys into the ground and then expect them to feel good about it in March.
Mhm.
Spo, the staff done an excellent job keeping minutes down, but if these guys, they've got to stay healthy if they want to put a push on here.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's it's almost like every year we have a collective amnesia about the playoffs, and we just kind of pretend they're all going to be the same. We're going to pretend everybody's getting healthy, and then we get to the conference finals and the finals, and it's this team lost 2 rotation players, that team lost a rotation player. Like last year, all the guys that went down with injuries at one point or another. It just happens every year, and we just kind of don't talk about it until we get there. But
Yeah.
this is the one where we have diverged finally.
Okay.
My number one is just big picture, big umbrella, is the offense.
Yeah.
October, November, this offense with no screens, basically a lot of quote unquote isolations. I know Spo doesn't think of them as isolations, but that's how they get logged by a lot of the data systems and everything. A lot of one-on-one play, attacking in space, kickouts. It was so new and it was so different, and the scoring totals were so extreme in October, November that we kind of felt like, oh, is this all of a sudden like an offensive scoring team? Like, are we talking about the 1990 Denver Nuggets or something like that? But as it turns out, this is still a defensive team. Just because the pace was high, that was inflating the numbers a little bit, and their actual the offensive rating over time gradually has kind of come back down to where it has been the past few years. I think 3 years ago they were 21 in offensive rating. Then they were 20. This year they're kind of around 17, 18, 19, 20, depending on when people watch this video. That's where they've been. There's a little upside for growth from there, but they've kind of become efficiency wise, but style wise it's different. But efficiency wise it's been about the same. And to me, there are 2 important numbers. The first one is that, and it's the one I've been tracking pretty much since the first day of the season, just because we knew that this offensive style had been what Memphis ran last year, and we knew some of the issues that Memphis ran into, during their season, in addition to all the health problems that Memphis suffered, which kind of played into how their season went. But against top 10 defensive rating teams, Miami's offense, among all the other teams, is number 26. They're 5-11 in those games versus top 10 defenses. Their shot quality doesn't change that much. Their free throw rate, which has been surprisingly good, and they've had free throw games where they're in the 40s.
Yeah.
Their free throw rate drops to like number 21 against those top 10 defenses. It's only 16 games. It's not a huge sample size, but that is where you project forward to what the playoffs look like. And we know, again, we're talking about things where we have amnesia about the playoffs. The playoffs are a different sport. Everything looks different. It's much more physical. It gets slower. We can tell ourselves that they're going to be able to keep up 105 possessions a game as far as pace. Realistically, that's probably going to come down just because of what the playoffs are. And in the playoffs, you're going to be playing more, top defenses. If you look at the potential playoff matchups, Detroit's a great defense. Boston, New York, those are all teams kind of hovering around top 10 defensive levels. Cleveland's been putting it together on defense. Their defensive rating has been going up. So you're going to be playing, Toronto's been a great defense too. You're going to be playing against teams that are good defensive teams with big wings who are not going to just get pushed, within 3 feet of the rim on your drives. And that's where we've kind of seen a couple issues where, all these one-on-one attacks, they meet big, lengthy defenders, and all of a sudden your 4-foot, 5-foot hook shot or runner is becoming an 8-foot runner. It's like a contested running hook shot or a contested turnaround jumper. So the shots change a little bit. And even pull back even further, this system is so new and so different for the league. And Memphis didn't really even get to test it out last year, but we don't know what it looks like in the playoffs, just generally speaking, regardless of the talent. I think, part of a lot of what we touched on today is where can, Kasparas, where can Tyler, where can all these different players, where can Bam and Kel'el, where can they start to find ways to level up on offense? And it all comes together to this massive offensive picture where a lot of it is just an unknown. And I don't want to say, well, I started off saying the offensive rating is about where it's been the last few years, but I don't think it has to stay there, especially considering the health problems that they have had as a roster. I just think we need to acknowledge that this is a huge unknown, and I don't think there's anybody in the league that can tell you what this offense is going to look like in the playoffs because nobody's seen it before.
Yeah, I agree. You know what? I would say two things. The number that I always kind of like go back to when I look at games that went well or maybe didn't go well is our paint field goal for percentage.
Yeah.
I think that that's an area that we struggle in sometimes, or the Miami Heat struggle in sometimes. And so Miami takes 94 shots a game on average, leads the league. If they only hit a couple more, how many more wins would they have, right? Like, 4 or 5 more of those. And I think, sometimes the paint field goal, and listen, they don't have the biggest guys in there. That's part of it too. But it's the space and the pace and the space and all that stuff. And then to your point, Coop, about the playoffs, when I go back to the bench, like this is what I'm talking about. Yes, it's a chess match. Yeah, you might not get away with the type like that up and down as much in the playoffs. But to me, like when you look at this roster, Pella, Jaime, I'm putting Kishad in there because I love, first of all, we're all talking about right
Don't
now.
contest champion.
So
Yeah.
for him. But my point is and they like, and I talked about this, and I agree that they love what he's doing. They love the season he's having. He just hasn't had the opportunity, but that doesn't mean that they don't trust to throw him in there when they need to. So when I think of like the style in the playoffs, they've got these guys that will get up and down. They're not scared to hit you. Like, you know what I mean? And so I actually look forward to that because as much as it's going to be an adjustment for Miami, it's still an adjustment for every other team, right? Like how things change. Like again, let's get there, right? Let's get there. But it'll be fascinating. You're right. It'll be fascinating to see how everything kind of shifts and that bit of a chess match type environment, but still trying to keep that pace up because that's the way this team has really thrived.
Yeah, and to the point about this being a defensive team primarily still, to me at least, as far as their identity is because a lot of that pace comes from your defense. It comes from the steals and the deflections. So if you want to be able to try to keep your pace up, you're going to have to get stops in the playoffs, which I think, to your point, they can definitely do regardless of what the rotation looks like in its finished 8-9-man form. They have enough defensive players, defensive playmakers that can do it. And the last thing I'll say is that one of the reasons I think there's upside to this offense that we haven't seen yet, and anybody watching has probably wondered why neither of us has mentioned third quarters yet, is because the third quarters have been obviously an issue. They're number 28 in offense in third quarters. But if you can clean that up somehow, if you can find the right combination of third quarter offense rotation, whatever it is, whether the lineups are, and just even get that number 28 ranking to like a league average offensive rating in third quarters, all of a sudden your entire offensive picture looks so much different because they're actually one of the better. They're like top 10 in offense in the first half.
Oh, they're one of the best.
Yeah.
I would even say if you went to the first quarter, like
actually, this is one of my favorite stats of the year.
Teams in the league.
They're actually they're the number one offense in the league in the first 3 minutes of the game.
Okay. Yeah, like it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. So if it's there,
I
go
think
ahead.
part of it is snap, but also like snapping back to that right away. Of course, teams are going to try to adjust coming out of the locker room, but for Miami, like they know what works for them. They've got to stay true to that also, right? Like not slow it down, not try to switch things, like imposing your will a little. It's going to be harder against a team that adjusts, but that's what sports is, like finding out how to snap back into the way you want to play. Because to your point, like if they can, and if you took that first 3 minutes and started a second half that way, that would shut the door on a lot of teams. It's when another team comes out, like Boston is the game that like I still have a little bit of like, oh gosh, from when we were up in Boston was it last 2 weeks ago, and Jaylen Brown came out of the locker room and got an and one. And like to me, like that was such a big play in the game because it was more of that like mental, like on both sides, by the way, because teams know too, right? Like I guarantee 29 teams when they play the Miami Heat in the locker room are talking about this at halftime. And so just understanding that and punching back. But if you can start those third quarters the way you start the game, you're going to close the door on a lot of teams, I believe. So, yeah.
Yeah, especially with all the halftime leads that they've had. You know, if you just extend a 16-point lead to 19 instead of that 16 going to 10, that's a huge difference in the way that the rest of the half is going to play out. And to me, that's their formula for beating a lot of good teams, for winning playoff games, because of the identity that they've established, is getting an early lead, then using all your talents and all your skills, everything you do well on defense, to hold that lead for the rest of the game. When back in 2023, when they made that finals run, that's a lot of what they were doing. They were hitting a ton of threes, but they were getting up early and then just holding out like stiff arm for the rest of the game. We're just going to be up 10-12 until the clock hits 0. And I think there's a different team, different roster, different look to everything. But there is a little bit of that still in this group that I think can get there, because a lot of these guys are still gamers. They're still defensive players. There is, what do you want to call it, gumption in this group. You just got to, clean up all these little issues, and all of a sudden, once you clean up, you plug a few holes, then things look very different because you've eliminated a couple of small things.
Yeah, I think guys like Pella, Jaime, I'm putting Casper. Listen, we play the Washington Wizards 3 more times. Casper's got real chippy. There was some he got under their skin, and there are guys on this team. I think as they continue, as their roles expand and they gain more confidence, it's okay to take a hard foul if you've got to slow a team down, right? You don't hurt somebody, but and this team has guys that I think are starting to embrace that type of identity. And so when we talk about those inflection possessions, we can feel them in games. I know I can, I'm sure you can too, right?
Yeah.
Where you just got to stop the bleeding. And sometimes it's making that type of play where you're just all right, everyone calm down for a second. But to your point, there are guys, in my opinion, you kind of have seen it as the seasons evolve, that are really starting to embrace certain roles and identities. They've been given opportunities to thrive and to grow, and they've taken advantage of it. So it's super exciting. I'm with Spo. When you look at the record of this Heat team, I see you have to go out and win the games, but I believe they're better than what that record looks like right now. Now they got to go and win the games, but I hope I'm still excited. I'm excited for this dash here out of the break. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to see what the rest of the season has in store for us. And hey, one thing we didn't mention is that Spo is still one of the best coaches in the league, if not the best coach in the league. And he always gives you
Hall of Fame, one of the greatest coaches the league's ever seen. So I get the frustration sometimes, but I'm also guys,
people don't see what happens in practices and shoot-arounds, but he's usually making the decisions that are right for the team. I'll put it that way, But we'll see. Obviously, main goal is just, if you're in the plan, win those games. But if you can get out of the plan and get into the playoff series, then you see what happens. But if that happens, if there is a series to preview, and hopefully there is, then we'll have Amy back again on After the Buzzer, and it'll be a thrill to have her then. It's a thrill to have her now. We always love talking to her. Amy, do you have any parting words for Heat Nation?
Just hang in there. Like I said, I think this is I think they're super young and exciting, and I just think there's a level that hasn't been tapped into yet. And once again, when you're the team that everyone's talking about, and not necessarily in the greatest of lights, I think that builds some kind of cohesion and identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this group is I think they've had this all-star break to really kind of get together, and I'm really excited.
Well, I think, Amy, we both feel like there is something there. It's just a matter of getting from here to there eventually. But until then, thank you, everybody, for watching. Remember to like and subscribe on YouTube. We have so much content on there every single day, everything you could possibly want about the Miami Heat. Just like and subscribe. Make sure you get those notifications for everything coming down the road. But until then, thanks for watching, and take care.